Welcome. These are our talks on how to understand the King James Bible using the book of Psalms. Today, however, we're beginning not with Psalms, but with Matthew chapter 18 and verses 2 and 3. And Jesus called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted, and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Become as little children. So many of the things that Jesus said and taught don't begin in the Gospels, but when we study the Old Testament, we discover these teachings already there. And this idea that to be pleasing to God you have to become as a little child, well, we find that in the book of Psalms too, Psalm 131, and it's that psalm that we're going to be looking at in our talk today. My name is Keith Simons. I'm a Bible teacher from England, and we look at the Psalms in these talks, verse by verse and word by word, to understand their meanings. The heading of Psalm 131 is a song of degrees of David. A song of degrees. Degrees means upward steps. And as the temple, God's house in Jerusalem, was on the top of a mountain, it was necessary for people to go upwards to reach that place. We find this heading, a song of degrees, in the 15 Psalms that begin with Psalm 120. We think that they were songs for God's people to sing as they approached the temple to worship God there. They were going to God's house, and these songs would prepare them to worship God at his house, the temple. Of David, that's King David. David wrote this psalm as he wrote so many of the other psalms. David was a great man, of course, a king, a powerful man and a wealthy man. Yet even as a powerful man, he knew how to be humble. It's possible for a poor person to become proud, and it's possible for a great and important person like King David to have truly humble attitudes. Yes, David considered himself to be the servant of God, and as a servant, a lowly servant, he gave respect to God. When the Ark of the Covenant, the most sacred object that Israel had, the box that contained the tablets of stone with the 10 Commandments, when that box was brought to Jerusalem, David danced in front of it. He wasn't ashamed if people thought he looked silly. He wanted to show joy in front of God. David was a man who showed humble attitudes. And he prayed, verse 1, Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty. Okay, haughty, lofty, both of them mean about the same thing. When we describe something as high up, that's something that's haughty, or the lofty. David prays, Lord, my heart is not haughty. God, I've not allowed my heart to become proud. I've not allowed myself to imagine that I'm greater than other people, that because I'm the king, David was a king, because I'm important, because I'm rich, I'm greater than other people. No, I know I must have humble attitudes. I know I must remember to respect you, and to respect you above all things, and to follow what you say, to obey your commands and your directions. My heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty. God, when I look at other people, I have to remember that I'm not greater than them. I have to avoid proud attitudes in how I look at other people. I have to make sure that I show respect to the poorest and the weakest of the people in my country, or foreigners from abroad. I can't say that just because I, King David, am the great king of Israel, they are worth nothing. No, I've got to respect them too, because I respect you. What did Jesus say the greatest commandment was? To love God with all our heart and mind and soul, and to love our neighbour as ourselves. And how are we going to love God if we imagine ourselves to be great and powerful and important and forget that God is so much greater than us? Or how are we going to love our neighbour as ourselves if we imagine ourselves to be much greater and better than they are? No, we must respect God. We must respect other people. David continues, verse 1, Neither do I exercise myself in great matters, or in things too high for me. God, you've given me my duties, and I must carry out those duties responsibly. I mustn't imagine that because I may be important or great, or because other people respect me, that I only handle great things or important things. And I mustn't imagine that I have knowledge that you've not given to me, that I can understand all the mysteries of heaven or of the spirit world. These things are too high for me. God, you understand them. God, you know these things. I must simply get on with my work, whatever work you've given to me, in a responsible and careful way, in the way that pleases you. Verse 2, David says, Surely I have behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. Surely. That's a word which often begins an oath, a serious promise to God. David is saying here, my serious promise to God is that I will behave and quiet myself. In other words, I'm not going to assert myself to try and prove my own importance and my own greatness. No, I'm going to accept God's greatness, and I'm going to come and I'm going to put my trust in him. I'm going to let him achieve the things that he wants to achieve in my life, in my country, in my work. My job is simply to do the work that God has given me. I look to God to deal with the things that he is doing, the things that he wants to do through my life. I've behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. To be weaned means to come off breast milk. A child was always in those days fed on breast milk, and at a certain age, of course, that child has to come off its mother's breast and no longer be fed there, and instead be gradually acclimatized to solid food. And that process is called weaning. As a child that is weaned of his mother. So the word picture here is of the child that has been fully weaned. When a child is first refused that breast milk from his mother, that child becomes distressed and disturbed by that. He doesn't know what's happening to him. He knows how to receive the nourishment from his mother in the form of breast milk, but how is he going to receive that nourishment when he has to eat solid food? And it's difficult for him. It's a trial for him, and the child easily becomes distressed and disturbed. But the child in David's word picture is the child that's been fully weaned. He's been on breast milk. He's now been placed on solid food, and now he accepts only the solid food. So he's come to a new experience of maturity in his relationship with his mother. He's no longer dependent on his mother. When he's breastfed, of course the mother has to hold him close to her body. Now he no longer needs that. He feels safe and he feels confident in his relationship with his mother, even though his mother doesn't still hold him like that. David emphasizes this. He repeats at the end of verse 2, "My soul is even as a weaned child." The soul means the inner life of a person, the real person. David is saying, deep in myself, I'm like that child that can trust his mother, though he doesn't still receive his mother's milk. That's how it is for us in our relationship with God. Maybe when we first trust God, we feel so close to him, we feel so confident, and yet there's new experiences to develop into. As we develop in our lives as Christians, there's new experiences of the life of faith. Being weaned from his mother gives that child a new independence, a new experience in life. He still trusts his mother. He trusts her even more because now that he doesn't receive nourishment from her body, he must receive the nourishment of her provision in what she cooks and makes for him. And so it is for God's people. As they develop and they become more mature, their trust in God should deepen and strengthen, just as God gives them more independence in their work for him. And they're doing all sorts of things that they could not have done previously because they're maturing and developing in their relationship with God. David had learned that place of maturity before God. He didn't imagine himself yet to be an adult in his relationship with God. He didn't imagine that he was that stage or that mature, but he knew that God had taken him further. God had taken him beyond that initial relationship to a deeper trust and a deeper faith in God, and how much he yearned for that, for the people he led, how much he wanted them to deepen in their trust in God, because now they were led too much by emotions. Now they were too easily led astray from that simple faith and trust in God. They weren't expecting God to do good things. They didn't have that strong hope in God. They thought they had to do everything for themselves, to have a strong army, to be a strong nation, to build up in wealth. They were forgetting that simple trust in God. And so David prayed for them at the end of his psalm, verse 3. He prayed that they too would know that hope in God that David himself had. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever. Because when Israel realizes that God does do good things, when Israel trusts that God is truly good, then their relationship with him will strengthen and will deepen. And so David prays that their hope, their trust, their confidence will be in God from henceforth, in other words, now and forever, for all time into the future, that Israel, that God's people will put their hope in God. In a moment, I'll read you the whole psalm, but first, my email address, 333kjv@gmail.com. I've had letters so far from the United States and from West Africa. I wonder where you're listening to this podcast from. Please do tell me. It would be lovely to know about you and about how you're finding these talks. 333kjv@gmail.com. My name is Keith Simons, and It would be great to hear from you, but here is the whole of Psalm 131 to finish with. A song of degrees of David. Lord, my heart is not haughty, nor mine eyes lofty. Neither do I exercise myself in great matters, or in things too high for me. Surely I have behaved and quieted myself as a child that is weaned of his mother. My soul is even as a weaned child. Let Israel hope in the Lord from henceforth and forever.